Hey guys, welcome. So I'm recording a YouTube video after quite a break. Well, it was not a break really because a lot has been going on in my life for the last few days and really good stuff, by the way. I'll be sharing some of it. So it's nothing, and I'm not ranting or it's nothing bad or anything. But yeah, at the same time, I was really busy, as you can understand. But in this video, I'll be sharing something important. I mean, of course, if I didn't think it was important, I wouldn't be recording this video. And well, this might be a bit extreme, as a disclaimer, because it may not be like that's how I'm feeling currently. So my views might be a little extreme at the time of recording the video. So don't take, I mean, basically, this holds true all the time. So take everything I say with a pinch of salt because I want you to think about this. I don't want you to just agree with me or just, that kind of thing. But the point is, I've been really wondering. I mean, there's been a lot going on, right? About research, funding, academics. What's the future in academia? What's the point of doing a PhD? Blah blah blah, everything. And well, I myself am an aspiring physicist, and I want to go to academia and research. So people like me have always defended the importance of academia. Even I have done that in many past accounts. But I was just thinking, and let's be honest for a moment, if research funding was actually cancelled or at least like severely cut in many fundamental sciences, would most humans society would they be really affected? Now I don't, of course, scientists and people who think that scientists are intellectually superior and they just trust the scientists, they will side with the view that no, it cannot. Definitely they will be affected. Research is after all very important for progress and the familiar narrative. But if you think about it seriously, of course research is important. At least some research is very important, but in my view, although I have not researched this topic extensively, I don't have any statistics or anything to show you, but in my view the majority of fundamental research do not directly affect human. I mean, if they're stopped, most of the humans would not be affected except the researchers themselves, of course. And the reason I'm saying this is that, well, I'm not trying to justify, basically I'm not arguing in this video. I am not speaking either for or against funding research. I'm not trying to make a point. I'm on no camps. I'm just kind of listing an observation. It's just an observation. It's not, I'm not arguing for or against any of the views, whether research should be funded or whatever. So but the point is, we at the end of the day, the human society operates, I mean, we it operates in such a way that basically the goal is to create a self-sustaining civilization from the evolutionary point of view. Then we have the economic constraints. That's definitely one of the most important constraints, you may say that. But yeah, at the end of the day, that's one of the like really the driving force, even science funding. So we're having this discussion because of money, because of funding, right? And that's not really what economists want, that to fund fundamental research. Because, well, you can say that, okay, maybe this research is going to have a big impact after 10 years and it maybe solve cancer or solve climate change. But that's maybe, and that's a very big maybe, because as we all know, even if you don't want to admit it, or no matter whatever arguments you try to come up with, that's really a very small probability. And the way we are going, well, the way humankind is going, we are faced with lots of challenges, problems, wars and political turmoils, religious turmoils, climate change, health issues, and I mean basically pandemics, then artificial intelligence. Well, we may either blow ourselves up. I mean, we may either finish ourselves, or we may, this is kind of like a phase transition. We may survive and things will just fall into place. Although it appears very dark at the moment, it's just another phase. But either way, I personally don't really believe that fundamental research is really gonna change the scenario dramatically or in a significant manner, at least in the near future. So in that case, basically why I'm making the video is that the question I want to address in this video, not just a single question, I just want to basically talk about a lot of stuff in this video, but maybe the most important thing I would like to address in this video is that, do we really need more PhDs, more scientists, more researchers? And this is coming from a master student who really wants to do a PhD and go into research. So it's coming from me, by the way. I am one of you guys. I mean, if you want to go into PhD, and still I'm arguing. I'm not really arguing for or against it, but well, I have some let's say strange views, maybe. I don't know, like unusual views. But yeah, I mean, you are the judge. But let me still speak. Well, I mean, now I mean, if you know, now I am a master student at Montpellier University in France, and well, I am associated with. I'm doing an internship in a CNRS lab, and I really get to see the real research culture in Europe. For instance, CNRS is one of the largest fundamental science agencies in Europe, right? And so I mean, seeing the system, first of all, I want to make a very honest observation, is that at least this is my, I'm not trying to normalize or generalize this, but this is my observation. My professors, my supervisors here, they are very extremely approachable, extremely kind, extremely helpful. And this is, I don't know how common or how rare this is, but for me it's very rare, and I'm really happy. The mindset, the environment in the lab, your the encouragement, and you are actually doing real work. It's a balance. Kind of work I do, at least it's a balance between numerical simulations and building original models. So this is why I love the field of complex systems and nonlinear dynamics, statistical physics, and applying these tech tools to study basically complex systems, biological systems, even social systems. There are a lot. This is a highly interdisciplinary field. And the bad part about this field is that, well, this is really not a. I mean, you cannot get very quick publications, which is one of the bad parts, because, well, you are trying to build new models, or I mean, this is not just the astrophysics type of work. In astrophysics, I'm not saying cosmology or general relativity, or that kind of. I have a lot of respect for those fields, by the way, because that's theory heavy, and you have to need to have analytical rigor, you need to have originality and stuff. Even then, I would say general relativity is already a well established framework. So, well, you already have the framework, the rigid framework. As for astrophysics, well, mostly it's just machine learning, computation heavy. So you just work with a very specific pipelines, which is a very good way to impress your friends who have never heard of it. I work in that big lab on that particular astrophysics pipeline. But at the end of the day, in my experience at least, I have not met with all the astrophysicists in the world. But in my experience, those people, they don't really have that. Well, let's not talk about analytical skills, because the we guys are doing mean field calculations, for instance, complicated analytics, nonlinear dynamics, differential equations, I don't know what else, saddle point approximation, solving big integrals, and at the same time we are doing numerical simulations, and our simulations are just standard. I mean, more standard than a specific astrophysics pipelines, at least not really standard in that sense, but compared to them it's standard. I mean, we use molecular dynamics, we use the potential, and then we see how it reacts. Then we use Monte Carlo simulations, for instance, different algorithms, different sampling methods, umbrella sampling, I mean, whatever. But the thing is that you need to really have a good logic of computation. Computation is not just about writing codes. You need to have the originality, the thinking, the logic, that how would I translate this instruction in the language of whatever language you're working with. But if you're working with something very specific, a pipeline, for instance, for analyzing a data set, you already have in astrophysics, for instance, you already have the exact same framework. There is nothing new. General relativity is the basic framework. You have the for instance, the Einstein's field equations, the metric, the Friedman's, all that stuff, the universe and everything. So you already have the metric. You already have the standard framework, and that's very well established. There is no reason to doubt it. You're not doing anything big original. Increments is just, you are using the same tools to different kinds of data, and these data sets are coming from big telescopes. That's not your credit, really. I mean, it's the guys who built the telescopes. But yeah, at the same time, it's good, because it's good in the sense that you can just apply the same techniques and sound technical, sound smart, and get a lot of publications. And those kinds of labs, I mean, well, if you can just get a place in such a lab, you can just enter your name in the paper. But it sometimes I feel very like, I mean, I don't know, I'm just surprised. Single paper, we just use some basic, nothing original, just some basic machine learning techniques to analyze the data. It has, let's say, 25 or 30 authors. And if I am to believe that all 25 or 30 of them actually contributed something fundamentally new, original insight into that paper, then that paper alone should have solved quantum gravity. So it's just a work of, I don't know, even maybe AI could manage it. And there are 25 authors, and it's just, I mean, every time someone cites the paper, all those 25 authors are getting a citations, and it's like a loop, positive feedback loop. So that's very easy to have great number of citations and like pose as a good scientist if you're working in those kind of fields. But that's not the same thing in our field, and I'm not complaining, by the way. Because in our field we question the rules, and there you have the rules, you just apply to different techniques and sound smart. That's it. Now I may sound a bit resentful, because, well, personally I really think this is not even personal at this point. This is objective. I really think the world needs more. I mean to say, nonlinear dynamics, physics of complex systems. This is really more relevant in the current situation than counting how many exoplanets might have life, or what is the age of that star. I mean to say, I'm not saying that's not a it's an important question, but revolving your research career around it and claiming that you are doing something good for society. Well, I mean, that doesn't really hold up, and you don't need me to tell you this. You just ask yourselves. Even if you are an astrophysicist who is watching this video, ask yourselves, you'll get the answer. I'm not saying the kind of work we do will solve cancer overnight, or will help us understand how DNA segregation occurs in the cell overnight, or will help us understand cell migration overnight, or will help us understand social dynamics overnight. But at the same time, there are hopeful reasons to believe. And nonlinear dynamics and complex systems, I mean, the tools we're using, there is some hints of universality which applies to real systems which have a direct impact on humans. I mean, be it medicine, health, or societies, or even something like, for instance, transport phenomena. There was a recently I attended a conference here in Montpellier. It was called International School on Urban Physics and Environmental Research. So there were lots of interesting talks. There were scientists. It was organized by Montpellier University in France. It took place in Montpellier, but there were three universities who kind of organized it: Montpellier University, and Technical University of Wien from Austria, and also Stuttgart University from Germany. And there were lots of like brilliant scientists from all over the world, even from US, and definitely from Europe, many parts of Europe, who came. And well, it was a very interesting conference, because I got to know that they're using similar techniques that I am using in my biophysics research, for instance, to study effects of flooding in a city. So you just model a city as many blocks, like many buildings. You can explore different geometries, because in a real city, if you look at a GPS view of a real city, it's not just perfect grids. The buildings are disarranged in a disordered manner. But and then you must just use basic hydrodynamics equations, like the Navier-Stokes equations, with proper boundary conditions, kinematic boundary conditions, dynamic boundary conditions. Basically, one is comes from the Bernoulli equation, basically the pressure at the surface. This is very approximate. These are idealizations, by the way. You are assuming that it's a perfect flow. You are ignoring viscosity at the bottom surface of the flow, but still, it gives very surprising and results that actually can model the flow of the effects of floods in a city in a very good way. This is just an example. There were many similar some talks. There was a talk on transport phenomena. Using similar techniques we used to study is transport in a cell, because in a single cell it's very crowded. There's lots of stuffs like the vesicles. There are many modes of transportation in a cell. Vesicular transport, for instance, you protein folding and stuff. So you build a protein from the mechanism, just molecular biology, basic. You build a protein by, you have the anticodons, and in the ribosome you assemble a protein, but the protein needs to be transported from the center of the cell, from the endoplasmic reticulum, to, let's say, the periphery of the cell. So how does the protein manage to transport? Because it's a very crowded cell with lots of intracellular organelles, and the protein has to find its way, and it has to know exactly where I'm going. So it's in a way, you can think it has some memory, it has some consciousness, it has some knowledge of what's around me, and it has to navigate that. So using similar techniques, in that talk, the speaker told us about transport phenomena in cities, because it's a conference on urban physics, not on biophysics. In a city, transport, traffic. So for instance, you just to ease up the traffic congestion, here you open a shortcut road, but that might increase the traffic somewhere else in the city. So it's like a self-regulating and a large interconnected complex networks, the kind of networks we study. For instance, I also did a bit basic kind of exploration of such Erdős-Rényi networks. So it's like randomly connected networks. You can have fully connected networks. You can have different topologies, like the connections can be modeled as a square lattice, as a hexagonal lattice. I was studying a different system, by the way. I was studying a system of coupled oscillators, and their effects, to study, for instance, synchronization in the heart, in the human heart. So there are some cells in the human heart. I forgot the exact biological name. Cardio, no, not cardiomyocytes, I forgot. But so basically, even cardiomyocytes show some degree of synchronization. So basically, they synchronize. So there is a ion gradient. The ion flows in and they synchronize, and this is essential for the heart pumping collectively. Like all the cells of the heart doing it collectively, so that the heart pumps like this, beats as a whole. And this kind of dynamics, phase slips, oscillators, synchronization, and that it's observed in a lot of places. For instance, in the neuron firing patterns. Now it's very, very dangerous to say that this model explains that. It's just some similarities, but to actually, we have to refine or adapt the models to actually explain this stuff, because this and heart and these are very complicated stuff. But yeah, there was some pretty interesting results which could explain transport phenomena, and that the same thing can be applied in cities. You have a flyover, you have a road, and so this kind of the same ideas that we apply in the cell, in the microtubules and all the transport in the cell. So, and I also presented as a student, of course, in the conference. I presented on something crazy, which you some of you might already know if you have been following my YouTube. I did some independent work on modeling emotions and feelings between two individuals, right? So I presented that brief presentation. And of course I presented it just as it's not really a presentation as a scientist, because it's not an established model, of course, and it's just a toy model, just a hypothetical toy model. It's because I haven't tested it on real data and that kind of thing. For instance, it's very difficult anyway, because emotions and data, I mean, what data? But well, so I presented the model as, basically it was an invitation to explore more, and I wanted to discuss with them, and I got to discuss with lots of interesting, not only researchers but also students, PhD students maybe, and whatever. And they were like, there was a poster, and they were like, they came to the poster and they asked me questions, and it was really great experience for me. But the point is, well, you may say that how is emotional dynamics related to urban physics? Well, if you want to, this was a very interdisciplinary and conference, and the atmosphere was very friendly. It was very serious. There were lots of big scientists, but at the same time, the environment was not judging. It was like new ideas are encouraged here, and I really loved that. I really loved that conference, and it was very interdisciplinary in spirit. So yeah, and my idea was also kind of received very well, I would say. So this might be relevant. I mean, for instance, in a city, if you're trying to what is my motivation was that I began my presentation by saying that, okay, let's think about this. There are many models, many approaches which study social dynamics and this kind of things from a large starting from a large number of individuals. Have a society, let's assume we have n individuals, where n is a large number, because once you make the assumption, you can use statistical arguments, you can use mean field approximations, and it really works. It's a good approach. But since there are already lots of models, lots of kind of better models, more tested, or at least more better refined models, my motivation was kind of different. I wanted to start from the simplest but non-trivial unit in society, which is just two individuals. I'm ignoring self interactions. You can say that even one individual can have a lots of emotions, and but okay, let's just ignore that for the model. We are doing modeling. We cannot be 100%. I mean, we should start with some simplifications. But two individuals in a society, that's the smallest but non-trivial pair, two interacting individuals. So I started from there, and I used some I mean, I have a presentation in my YouTube channel, 4 hour long, in which I explained my model inside out. Basically, if you are interested, you can watch it. And but basically I used nonlinear dynamics and formulated. But this is just toy modeling. This was just motivated from basic psychological trends, but this is not data driven. I mean, I didn't test it against data. So I built a set of four coupled nonlinear equations and enumerated the different ways the emotions and feelings can evolve between two individuals. And the best part of the model, in my opinion, is that it's kind of like you could say, the best, let's say, the robustness, or in a way the strength of the model, because there are lots of weaknesses as well, which I totally acknowledge, is that I was able to define a parameter which gives you the instantaneous measure of alignment between the pair, because we're talking about two individuals. It's a dyadic model, and this parameter works for all possible combinations of the feelings and emotions of the two individuals, different signs, different magnitudes, different intensities, whatever. It works every time. So I cannot go into details here, but yeah. But then the point is, let me come back. So now let's be real for a moment. There are lots of cardiologists treating cardiac arrhythmias. Do you really think they have a knowledge, or they actually use research in Kuramoto type models which try to understand this in their treatment of the patients? They don't. Lots of psychologists are treating patients with emotional problems. I mean, basically mental health problems. Do you think they actually care to check that whether someone has tried to model emotions using differential equations? No, they don't. Point is, research, at least this kind of most kind of research, I would say, because you may say that research is important, because if there was no research on electricity, there would be no electricity. Society runs on electricity, I know that. But I'm talking about electricity means the theoretical work, the foundational research work on electricity was laid back more than 100 years ago. The rest was not really scientific research. It was just scaling up, translating the theory to practice, and it's mostly engineering and innovation. That's not real research. I mean, if I ask you to name a single scientific fundamental research in the last 10 or 20 years that has directly affected your life, improved your life, I'm pretty sure you cannot name a single thing. Oh, no, there is a lot of buzz going on social media, on the internet and stuff, that MIT researchers have a breakthrough in that university did a breakthrough. Now, those are not really breakthroughs in that sense, because okay, maybe they showed us a very curious, very interesting result. Maybe they showed us something very promising about quantum computing, but the device I'm currently recording this video on does not run on quantum computing. It runs on a technology, the physics of which was laid back almost 100 years back. That's the truth. So the point is, if really fundamental research were to stop all over the world right now, society would only be marginally affected. Compare that to, let's say, economy collapsing, compare that to a war breaking out, compare that to millions of people losing their jobs. And well, most people are not researchers, so this doesn't, I mean, you don't say that. I mean, yeah, researchers losing their job will also create some disturbances, but this is, for instance, compare that to some more popular career going extinct overnight, just as a thought experiment. You see what I mean? So the point is, do we really need more researchers? And now I'm going to be very honest, very blunt. You may not agree with me. You may say that, then why do you yourself want to become a researcher, and at the same time I believe that we don't need more researchers? Yes, I do. Because I want to become a researcher in, not in a traditional sense, but I have to follow the traditional path, master's, PhD, because harsh as it may sound, I need money, I need a job to live my life. What's the point in living my life? No point. But at the same time, I cannot, you know, I have, well, from the reason can vary from person to person, but for me, I have created tried to create, and to some extent, I have created a ecosystem, you can say, where many people depends on me. Not financially, but I mean, I've created a journal where young students can submit and publish their physics papers. I'm not saying I have thought about it. If I were to die tomorrow, the journal would not stop. But well, I mean, there are a few people. There are many people who would actually love if I'm out of the way. I know that. But there are also a few people who generally don't want me to die. I'm not saying I'm leaving because of them. That's just, I mentioned that, but that's one reason to, to believe that my life is more than just about myself. That's why I mentioned. But the main reason I want to live is that, well, I have to die anyway. So death is not, I mean, how do I put it? Death is not something I have to fight for. It will come to me anyway. So, but life is something I have to fight for. You have to fight each and every moment for living. You have to breathe in the air. If I stop breathing now, I mean, that was just a metaphorical example. But the thing is, to live your life, I mean, there are people who will try to break you. There are systems who will try to break you. Maybe you'll be tempted to just, I'm fed up with this life at many moments in your life. But you're still living. That means you are fighting for it. But you don't have to fight for death. You know that it's coming after let's say 60 years anyway. So if I know that I'll be getting it after 60 years, isn't it a good idea to first utilize this 60 years into trying to get something that I'm not bound to get? You see what I'm meaning? See, for instance, you know that you will get that gift, but after some time you will get it. But I mean, you don't have to fight for it, you don't have to compete for it. But till that time, there are many other meaningful stuff you can do, but you have to fight for that. So what's the good idea? At least try and fight for that. I'm not saying there's a guarantee. You may not get everything. You definitely will not get everything. But at least use this time to try to do something meaningful and impactful. And then after all, you will die anyway. That's obvious. That outcome is deterministic, right? The path is not deterministic, but the outcome is deterministic. So that's the reason. But at the same time, I really believe we don't need more researchers because the research culture, I'm not saying there are many good scientists, good researchers, but the system, especially the publication, the journals and all, it has become very, very, I mean, this is nothing new, so I mean, I don't need to talk about it. Most people are watching this video anyway. No, some of you know it better than me, in fact. Publish or perish, basically. So you have to keep publishing to stay afloat because your credibility and your, how do I put it, your value as a scientist, the sole metric of that in many cases is or how many publications you have, how many people have cited you, and that kind of thing. Nobody cares that you actually work in a field where publishing is not possible. In astrophysics, people can just do a data analysis and publish a paper every week. It's possible. Plus you have a group, you're just trying to smuggle your name into a paper. That's it. You're not even doing real original work. You're just doing routine job. But in some other fields, it's not so easy. You're doing foundational work. You have to think for years before you have something worth publishing. But your work is not only more difficult and more intellectually honest, more original, but also more important. But nobody's going to judge that. At the end of the day, you're a scientist with n number of citations, and they are a scientist with m number of citations. M is greater than n. That means they are better scientists. This is the way people think, at least unconsciously. And some people even think, because the ones who don't know the truth about academia, they think like this. So that just, okay, more number of papers means better scientists. Even institutions, they have like in some countries at least, you need to have this many publications, else your job as a scientist will be like, you won't have a job anymore. So this is like you're encouraging people to find shortcuts and just publish, but not really find new things. And if this is research, because in many ways this is what research means nowadays in practice, not in theory. Nobody will agree. In theory, research is like, oh my god, it's the best intellectual adventure, blah blah blah, all that emotional shit. But in practice, this is what research has become today. And if this is the case, then I really don't think we need more researchers. I really don't think we need more PhDs. I really don't think we need more scientists, because in practice, if this is what science is today, I don't think. I think we need more thinkers. But there is a problem there. Thinking doesn't bring money. Thinking doesn't bring food on the table. And given the current situation in the world, political unrest, turmoil everywhere, your future is uncertain basically. And on top, yeah, the best you can do is not marry and have kids, because at least you're not bringing a new member into a world which is doomed for the most part. So that's at least a little you can do. You're saving the life of, you're saving someone who never existed by not bringing him in the world. And you also, by not marrying, you're kind of not only protecting your mental peace, but also in a way also protecting your part. I mean, not really, because that person, your would-be partner, might marry someone else, but at least you're protecting your mental peace. But apart from that, I mean, there is nothing to really. I'm not saying the world looks hopeless, we are done for, because in history humankind has gone through wars. So if you think about it, if you just detach yourself and look at it from above, from a bird's eye view, we are not really finished in that sense. But at the same time, currently we do seem to be, in my view at least, we do seem to be going through a phase which is not objectively worse than some phases in history, but definitely something which history has not prepared us for. You see what I mean? I'm not saying this is worse than what humankind has ever faced. Oh my God, we're finished. AI is gonna take over us tomorrow. Not that kind of dramatic narrative. No, I don't believe that. That's not true. But at the same time, we are currently going through something which history has not prepared us for, but which is true. I mean, during the world wars, history has not prepared us for that as well. That's why things turned so devastating then. So we learn through experience. History is not like history is not like a constitution. You have everything you're about. You learn through experience. You don't have a textbook you can always refer to. But yeah, I mean, that means we should, as always, we should be more, we should think about this instead of just going with the flow, going with the narrative. In social media, I personally think information in today's world, in today's age of digital, just excuse me, I need to have some water. I'm sorry, but yeah, I'm sorry. So in today's world, it's a very interconnected world. Like it's like a internet has turned the world into a global village, that kind of thing. And that's true, by the way. And what are the, you may say that, that's the beauty of technology. I can chat with my friend in the US sitting in, for instance, Europe or Asia. The problem is that things have become very correlated. And what's the problem? Well, social media, you can use it to spread misinformation. You can use it to create false narratives. And you know why? This is human psychology, by the way. This is not about the internet. This is not about digital technology or anything. This is about human psychology. People always find it easier to criticize someone who is actually building real things than to try and build something meaningful on their own. The reason is simple. That's difficult. Not everyone can handle that. And well, but they still have, that's the way our instinct, our survival instincts, our base level human instincts work. We always have to try to appear important. No, I am important. And how to ensure that? Well, I cannot really build meaningful things. I cannot really take that responsibility, but he is doing it. So at least I can, create fake narratives on social media and try to defame him, and that can, so that I would appear involved in the process, even though I'm just creating more unnecessary friction, and I don't have anything meaningful to contribute. But that's the motivation basically. And now you have the internet, so you can just create false narratives. It can reach millions of people, and you can just mess things up. See the problem? In the past, before the internet, I mean, it was like, of course there was communication, but it was not so fast. And people who want to spread misinformation they were not very keen on doing that, because that was very expensive, that was very time consuming, and that's not always very efficient. Today you can do it with a click of you just type something and just press enter, and the process begins at zero cost. So that's the problem. As with any new technology, there is both the good and the bad. But well, yeah, I mean, but this correlation is something. I mean, this I am reminded of the easing model. I'll be dropping a video about the easing model, by the way. It's a so I don't want to talk about the technical aspects in this video, because this is more meant to be a general discussion on do we need more researchers, as the title suggests. But basically, in statistical physics, we have a model called easing model. It's about magnetic spins. But just to give you the qualitative idea, there is something called critical slowing down. So basically, what happens is that just before there's a critical region so basically, let's say you are decreasing the temperature, you are starting from a high temperature, decreasing the temperature, and the model evolves. I mean, the behavior of the model changes in response to that drop in temperature. And at a certain critical temperature, it suddenly transitions from a very disorganized state to a very ordered state. Just to give you the qualitative idea. If you're interested, you can watch the video on the aging model. I'll be dropping in maybe tomorrow or the day, definitely by next week. Okay, so that's like a phase transition, right? That's a jump from disordered to extremely ordered state. But here's the thing: just before the phase transition, just on the onset of the phase transition, there is something which we call critical slowing down, because in that state, I mean, in that time, the entire system becomes highly correlated. So just to give you the non-technical, non-mathematical argument, it means that even the extreme, let's say we have a huge large system, so even the parts of the system which are very far apart, so even they are become correlated, the entire system is correlated. And why do we say it's critical slowing down? Because the dynamics of the system slows down. Why? Well, everything is correlated, so if you want to flip, because in the model we have spins either up or down spin, and the spins can flip randomly, but there is a energy cost with that. You cannot just do whatever you want, of course. That's why it makes the model interesting. Otherwise it would be total chaos, total noise. It won't be giving us any real insight or information. So since everything is correlated, if you want to flip a single spin from up to down and all the spins in its neighborhoods are up, so you need a lot. You actually need to, I mean, how do I put it? Basically, there are two tendencies of the system. One is that you would want order, you would want organization, which means that if I am up, I would want the spins around me to be up as well, so that we're all ordered. At the same time, there is an effect which we call entropy, which wants everything to be disordered. Like it wants the system to be random. So if I'm up, I want you to be down, and like basically it's all mixed up, just opposite effects. But when the critical slowing down takes place, I mean, in this regime, what happens is that these two forces kind of balance out, and the system becomes scale independent. So basically it doesn't matter whether you're trying to flip one spin or 100 spins, one part of the system or 100 parts of the system, it costs you around the same energy, because energy is being balanced by entropy. So here you need less energy, less entropy. There are huge energy, but at the same time huge entropy, so it's balanced out. That's why it's really difficult to move the system, and the dynamic slows down, and then suddenly you have a phase transition. Now, I'm not this is just a metaphor, by the way. I'm not saying that this is real physics, what I'm going to say now. What the model I described is real physics, but I mean, if I just try to think about it metaphorically, if I try to apply this to society, the internet is kind of like this correlation. And if currently what we're going through, if you want to describe it in terms of critical slowing down, well, that seems to be the case. I mean, the conflicts and everything seems to be slow. I mean, everything seems to be passing very slowly, and there seems to be like the world seems to be in disorder, in chaos, essentially, because, well, there are lots of wars, lots of conflicts, and I mean to say resolution is very slow. There are lots of problems arising, but the clouds don't seem to be passing. So when I say the dynamics of the world has slowed down, what do I mean by this is that not just in terms of scientific research, by the way. Even then you could argue maybe because progress in the fundamental science has been really slow, but at the same time progress on other areas like artificial intelligence has been like exponentially, I mean, has been rapid. So by slowing down, I'm not saying that, but at the same time, you know the noise is increasing essentially, and that means a slowing down of real human intellectual development. That has definitely slowed down in my view, because, well, I mean, what we're doing basically, we're just, most humans, at least most people, they're just doom scrolling on pointless, for instance, Instagram and that kind of thing. Some people, they're just amplifying noise. Some people are just posting out of emotions, or out of like rage posting basically, or hate posting, hating for no reason or for personal reasons on the social media, and people are just amplifying the noise, and that basically everyone is jumping on the bandwagon, but nobody's stopping and thinking, why are, like, what we're doing actually, does this make sense? And that means it's a critical slowing down of real intellectual progress. When we look at humankind as a whole, I'm not saying there are no real intellectuals. I mean, there are some people who think the right way, but if you think about humankind as a whole, I would say on average majority of the humans are moving in that wrong direction. It's not just they're moving randomly, they're lost, because if you're moving randomly, sometimes you are bound to hit the right direction, but it appears that we have slowed down progress. That's why I made this metaphor, like we are moving with conviction in the wrong direction, like we are slowing down real progress, real intellectual progress of humankind as a whole, not at the individual level, because there are some individuals who are, but yeah. But the good part, or maybe let's say the slightly hopeful part about this, is that if we still want to continue the metaphor or the analogy with the Ising model, it also means that we may be nearing a phase transition. And so it's a phase transition from a disordered to an ordered phase. So maybe things will pass, and I mean, maybe something will happen which we cannot imagine at the moment, because that's what a phase transition is. You cannot really it's not very intuitive. But once it happens, we reach an entirely different world, and we don't know whether that world will be. It can either be entirely destabilizing, and it can be like catastrophe, or it can also be very, just a good transition. That remains to be seen. I don't know, but just thought I would mention this. So I think now I should stop ranting because I have some stuff to do tomorrow. I have a presentation, an online one, but I have to make the slides, by the way. And well, this week was kind of like, I attended a conference. I gave like a poster presentation and the presentation, and then there was in the same week I had another presentation about my personal project, as part of my master's course, my master's curriculum. I presented that as well. I defended my report, my project report, and then, so you can understand, like, so many presentations, conferences, and also classes, managing everything, time, and also tomorrow it's like an online presentation. It's not as serious as the conference and whatever already I have passed, but yeah, but it still means that no rest for me in the weekend. Today is a Saturday, so I don't know, I have to make the slides now, so, and I have some other stuff to do. But the point is, well, anyway, just forget that was not really relevant for the video, but anyway. So my personal view is that we really don't need more researchers, at least the way we are producing researchers. From a practical point of view, this fundamental research does not affect human lives as a whole, and practically I see why it might make sense to cut down research funding. So then, in the end, you can ask that, okay, what's the point of making the video? You yourself want to go to do a PhD and go into academia, and you're criticizing your own field. Yeah, I am doing that. I have that because I'm just being honest. I'm being honest that most PhDs never make it. Most PhD theses, they don't have any real world applications. Elon Musk is one example. I'm not saying I agree with that guy or I idolize him. There are lots of things he does which are totally unacceptable. But at the same time, you cannot deny that he got a PhD offer from a prestigious university. He didn't do it. And, well, he was, from what I hear, I'm not sure, but at that point of time in his life, it might seem to be a safe option to just join the PhD program. He didn't do it. He chose the unsafe path. He built companies, and he's having real impact on human lives. Starlink, Tesla, SpaceX. Do you really think that if Elon Musk did a PhD and became a very respected, well-cited scientist and professor, would he have more impact on people than what he's having now? And I'm not saying that everyone who rejects a PhD offer becomes Elon Musk. No, but point is, from a practical point of view, PhD is just a degree. It really, and okay, maybe it helps you personally because you go through a tough grind, you go through lots of challenges, and once you complete a PhD, it boosts your confidence and stuff. But in most cases, your thesis is just a thesis, just a report. It has no real world application. If you really want to impact human lives, again, I'm not saying just blindly do what today's generation is doing, just vibe code and build an app, build a startup. That's even worse. I mean, these kids, they don't have any actual knowledge of how artificial intelligence works. They don't have any knowledge in AI. Is less about computer science and more about statistical sampling, knowledge about how the statistical sampling, machine learning algorithms, and also, like, even statistical mechanics in a way, the Boltzmann distribution and that kind of thing, information theory. It's not just about computer science. It's a lot of mathematics, graph theory. Mathematics is the most important, and also physics even. So these kids, they don't have any knowledge, and they're just using, today there are lots of vibe coding kind of apps and whatever. So they're just using it to build a cool looking app. It looks cool. Okay, you're just, oh my god, you are 15 years old and have built this app. That's good. You're gonna be a great engineer or great AI scientist one day. Point is, or maybe you're building a startup and you're just pretending that, see, I have real impact. I am only 20 years old and I have built a startup. I see all this all the time in LinkedIn and everyone, people bragging and everything. So you can do that to add to your CV or to impress the people locally. I know it sounds cool, it looks cool, but even that's not gonna have any real impact. Neither PhD nor that startup line. I mean, if you really know what you're doing, but that's very rare. Trust me, most people don't. Most people who pretend they do, they actually don't. The Journal of Young Physicists, the organization I built, it's not a startup, it's not a company. I'm not trying to, we don't charge authors for submission of articles or publication of articles. We don't sell merchandise. We don't even accept donations. It's a not-for-profit organization, and our sole purpose is to give a platform for young students to publish their physics articles. And even if, well, our main policy is not, not to compete with real peer-reviewed journals or for impact factor, that kind of thing, because it's mostly a young student-run platform. But at the same time, we review all submissions. It's kind of like an unofficial peer review system. and we encourage young students to submit to us, and we as much as possible, as long as it's not totally inaccurate or wrong physics, we try to adapt the real honest, intellectually honest work by young students. We try to adapt and publish it rather than just reject it, because we are trying to both communicate physics and also to foster the growth of young physicists, to encourage it. This is coming from me personally, because I know what rejection feels like. When I was like 15 years old, I was emailing professors and even some organizations about my crazy ideas. And now I realize in retrospect that those ideas were not really acceptable as scientific. But the way I was rejected, either indifference, like nobody replied to my emails, even though I, sent a follow up once or twice, no reply, or someone just, sometimes they just, some organization, they mocked me even. Like, you're a 15-year-old student, just focus on a curriculum. You're not a physicist. Don't try to act like one. Well, I was not trying to act like a physicist. I understand it was, to now I understand why that idea was not totally correct, but they could at least have encouraged me, keep thinking, but maybe you should think in the wrong, you are thinking the wrong direction. Maybe that part was not right, that this part was not right. I would have appreciated that. No, just this kind. So I know what it feels like to be rejected. And then I joined the Young Scientist Journal. I founded my own organization. I published a popular science book, and some of you know my story, my journey already. So today I have institutional power. I am associated with a real lab. I have an institutional email. I have good world class research university, and at the same time I have some leverage outside traditional academia. I mean, because my identity is not just a master student in Montpellier University and an intern at a lab. I have my own journal. I am doing I'm doing mentorship activities in the Young Scientist Journal, mentoring high school students, and I'm responsible for all the basically publications of the JYP, where lots of young high school students submit their work, their original work. You can take a look at our website now. We really we get lots of good submissions now, so it's really yeah. And but the point is, and that's the reason. I mean, I know what it feels like to be rejected. So I will never, as much as it's possible, I will never be the reason that someone stops thinking. So that's why whenever we get submissions, or even if someone reaches out to me personally that Arpan, I have this idea, or JYP, we always give detailed feedback if it cannot be published, and if it can be published with slight modifications, we do it. Sometimes we even add an editor's note that this is published in as a conceptual exploration, as in the spirit that this was written by a 14-year-old student. So just a clear editor's note, in a way validating the work, but at the same time in a way framing it as a conceptual exploration and not as a new physics principles. Because yeah, when you're young, it's rather than doing nothing at 14 years age, if you try to write something which where the physics is correct, but maybe you are a bit over ambitious, you are just over interpreting it, that's totally okay. That's good, in fact, because you're thinking ahead of your times. And it's normal to mess up initially. That's how you learn. That's how I learned. I just look at my if you look at my early reports which I wrote when I was 15, you laugh. I laugh at them now. They were totally not totally correct scientifically. But today the kind of research I'm doing, I built up my own model and presented it here without supervision in the conference, the emotional model. Well, that was required. Without that training, if I didn't mess up then, I wouldn't have learned this. This doesn't happen overnight, right? So yeah, of course I was not trying to model emotions then, but that training in thinking was required. I have lived that. So that's the thing. I never want to. I always encourage dreaming, but at the same time, I would be a bit cautious about being too rigid about what you want to do in life, especially in today's world, because today's world is all about adaptability. The one who wins the game is simply the one who stays in the game long enough, and to stay in the game, you have to adapt to the rules of the game. So if you're like, no, I want to be a physicist, I have to be a physicist, that's a wrong approach. Because well, in today's world, academia, well, I don't know what's tomorrow. Today Trump is cutting research funding in the US. Tomorrow it can happen in my country, in your country. I mean, I mean to say, it shouldn't be too rigid, because if you are focusing all your effort on that, you unconsciously start believing that no, if you cannot become a physicist, you are a failure in life, which is not true. Because not getting accepted into a good PhD program does not mean that you don't have the competence. It may mean that maybe your interest areas was not in demand at that time, or maybe that particular lab did not have a vacancy at that time, or maybe you just got unlucky. Maybe your PhD admissions committee was having a bad day. Sounds very rude, but it's sometimes it happens. Point is, that doesn't invalidate you as a person, or your whatever you've done. So for instance, me, well, many people believe that I am actually in a way overachieving student, because beyond academics even in academics here, for instance, or even back in India, I get the like near the top grades, sometimes highest. And at the same time, I'm managing so much outside academics, right? Not just the things that are part of the curriculum, like internships which are part of the curriculum where you have a supervisor. I'm doing so much on my own as well beyond internships, then building organizations, journals for young students and that kind of thing. So people naturally expect that, no, maybe I'll get accepted to a very good PhD program, maybe I won't, and okay, I am under not no pressure. People try to put me under pressure, some with good intentions, some with not so good intentions, but that's the way society works. If they see someone, either they try to slow him down, or they're like, oh, this we have a lot to expect from him, and both are very, create a pressure on that individual, which is very bad. But at the same time, at this point, I have stopped caring about what you expect from me or what you think from me. I just want to live my life at this point, being true to myself. That means always motivating young students, but at the same time, without pressure. Like, no, it doesn't. If I don't get accepted to a good PhD, does that mean that whatever I did so far, all my works, all my independent work, all my journals, will become invalidated? So Arpan is a failure just because he didn't get accepted to that PhD program. I don't see myself that way. Of course, maybe some of you will, but I don't see myself that way, because in a world like this, your intellect, your internal motivation, and your knowledge is not really enough to get you into a good PhD program. You need connections, you need networks, you need politics, you need luck, and also it depends on the topic you're working on, the time. I mean, the so yeah, it's not it really depends on a lot of factors, and not being accepted is, it's really not a statement about your intellectual ability. You understand? That's why I of course, my primary aim in life is still to become a researcher, because that's what I enjoy the most. Not because I believe that, no, research is the most important thing, we cannot cut research funding. Well, that's debatable. I really don't think that the way traditionally, I mean, in practice, the way research is being carried out, well, sometimes we indeed feel that, no, we don't need more researchers. uh, from the perspective of humanity in general, if for people like us, we want. But really, just ask yourself the question. I'm not speaking, just let's be honest with yourself. Do you really, honest with ourselves, do you really think that the fundamental research, if it was totally stopped, only a few marginal percentage of the population would be really affected? So that is my point basically. But if tomorrow some airline stops operating, millions will be affected, just as an example. I mean, so yeah, my point is, that's why I try to keep myself involved in a lot of stuff outside just my curriculum and coursework and internship and traditional physics, because, well, at least even if I don't get accepted in a PhD or something, or for some reason, even if my primary aim of becoming a physicist or going the traditional route on the academy doesn't work out, I then at least I will have some plan B, plan C, because it's always important to, like I said, in today's world, the most important skill is adaptability. Not being the best. Yeah, of course, you have to be the best at whatever you're doing, then that's always a good thing. But you should not be like, no, I have to be a physicist or else my life is finished. That kind of mindset, be it in any field, not just physicist, it's very dangerous. So you should always be open to exploration. But yeah, and at the same time, it's always a good idea to remain grounded in the scope of your field, and not act like, because scientists always have unconsciously, they act very hostile when we ask them of funding cuts and that kind of thing, because, well, that's an unconsciously, that you're just, that's an existential threat to them. You're asking a scientist, that why should we fund your research, we should cut research funding. So that's an existential threat, and they're replying like, research is the most important thing, if you cut funding, you cannot expect anything, progress will stop, blah blah blah. Practically, not really, nothing, no progress. Society, 99% of the society, I would say, I don't want to say an exact number, but the huge majority of society will not be affected at all if your research, if your research is not funded from. Only thing that will be affected is your ego, and maybe the students working under you, their stipends, nothing else. That's a very, I mean, just maybe compared to humanity as a whole, that's really not an argument to, you see what I mean, that you, like, your scientists have this, the way of, like, my research is the most important thing going on in the world currently. That's just, they're speaking out of insecurity. Trust me, I am not. I want to be like them. I want to be a scientist. I want to go to academia. But at the same time, I realize the limitations. And if for some reason that doesn't work out, I will I will be mostly ready to try to adapt to a different field which suits my interest. That's my second best choice. And the point of making this video was that this is what I would like to end with. All of you, the ones who are, for instance, who like me, who want to go to academia, have this thought in mind. The earlier the better. If you're a high school student, now is the right time to think. If you're a bachelor, same. If you're a master student, maybe you are a little bit late, but definitely start thinking seriously. It's always a good idea to, think about at least a few options apart from your number one choice, that what I would do in life. Just broaden your horizons, look beyond your what you're currently confined in, and then you will feel less stressed out. Because if you're looking here, you're like, oh my god, I have to secure this PhD offer, else my life is finished, and that creates even more stress, and that can also affect your performance in a negative way in many cases. But if you're like, okay, this is my primary choice, but there is a world to explore, and okay, maybe currently the world is not so looking not so positive, but at the same time there are things to be looking forward to, there are things that makes me happy, and there is so much I can do in this life. So there is so much. Okay, maybe I can try that. If this doesn't work out, maybe I can try. That's a very hopeful attitude. So yeah, just think about it. We don't really need more researchers, we need more thinkers at every stage of life, starting from individual to global. Because I heard this somewhere, I don't remember exactly where, but it's from whom, but it's a very important idea. If you really want to solve the conflicts, there are basically three levels of conflicts. One is at your conflict with yourself, personal level, individual level. There is no, not even any second person, just you with yourself. Level two is your conflict with the people around you. This is the, for instance, personal conflicts, relationship conflicts, politics, in your workplace, that kind of thing. Your conflict with other humans, basically. Level three is your conflict with your surroundings. I mean, non-living, your environment, not humans. This is actually like a global, for instance, climate change. It's an example. It's a conflict between humans and the environment. We are degrading the environment. That's why pollution, global warming, climate change, these kind of levels. So if you really want to solve these conflicts, you have to start from level one, and there is no shortcut. If you have not crossed level one, you can pretend to be solving level 2 level 3 problems on your CV, on your profile, but you're not really doing it. You cannot do that if you have not solved level 1. So first you have to solve your conflict with yourself. What do you expect from yourself, and what do you actually want to do in your life, regardless of what the people around you want of you, what the people around you expect or impose on you. So first of all, you need to resolve this conflict with yourself once and for all, level 1. And trust me, this is the most difficult step. Once you're done, then level 2 is relatively much easier, because you're not even running on external validation. So resolving conflicts with other humans is a bit easier. Level 3 is not easy, because level 3 is not just depends on how you handle personal or conflicts with other humans. It's also a lot of for instance, issues like climate change. Well, if you're just a good diplomatic leader, doesn't mean you can solve climate change. So there's also lots of other constraints, scientific constraints. But yeah, definitely, to even hope to do something in that direction, first of all, you need to work out level 1 and level 2. And I think that's very important, pretty important and relevant advice for all of us, whether we want to be scientists or researchers or not. And with that, think about it, and I would love to know your thoughts. Thank you.